the fall major has come and gone, and with that means it's time for some new rankings. This time, instead of doing a rankings video for each region after every single event, I'm going to be doing a top 20 of the entire world. So this is going to include NA and EU like I normally do, but it's also going to include all the teams from MENA, OCE, SAM, and where they match up. And so this is the top 20 rankings of the world after the fall major. Now, since it's top 20, not all of these teams will have seen the LAN stage. That being said, one of the teams in my honorable mentions has KC Pioneers. Not really the greatest LAN event. They lost in the finals for both their two most recent OCE events and then went 0-9 in the Swiss stage. Didn't win a single game, let alone a series. So tough LAN for them. Hope they're able to bounce back, but I do have them outside the top 20 right now. Next, we have Optic, who is AJ, Reynolds, and Magic Bear. I think this team still is going to gel more with more time, and I hope they're putting in the hours and can prove me right because I have still a lot of high hopes for this team. And I think next major, they'll be a dark horse since many people aren't thinking they're going to make it after seeing them in the fall. I do think they have that potential, though. Also, Vitality is probably going to be one of the more interesting teams to watch this split. You got Alpha, Radosin, and Sizen, and then Zen is sitting on the bench waiting for his ban to expire, which will happen in spring. So this is probably the last split that we'll see this roster together, and it's going to be a competition to see who stays on the roster. So definitely some drama when it comes to watching Vitality, so that'll be a team to tune into this split. At number 20, though, I have Rule 1. This is Rawas, Kaliers, and Natter. If you're paying attention to the MENA scene, these guys have been kind of on a tear. They actually won the first regional, but then made top 4 and then top 2 in their next two. Just barely missed out on LAN. They did go to Europe to boot camp and actually played in a small tournament hosted by Fear, where they ended up beating Kansas City Pioneers, and they beat Team Secret in the finals. So it was a brief 1K tournament. They ended up winning the money that they put on the line themselves, that being the org. But definitely a strong performance from them in that tournament. And I don't really normally take into account tournaments outside of RLCS for where to rank teams. With that being said, their win over Secret, especially before Secret went on their insane run that they did in the major, I feel like that propels them above Kansas City Pioneers. Normally, I wouldn't take that head-to-head as too much weight, but due to the run that Team Secret made, I do have these guys squeaking in at number 20. At number 19, I have NRG Esports. This is Justin, Garrett G, and Squishy. This team has had some rumored roster changes floating around. There was a very brief rumor before the major about Justin going to Furia. Not sure what's going to end up happening with that, but if this roster stands, I have them ranked number 19. I think it might be time for them to split up. I'm not sure how much they're going to be able to bounce back. They did get Epic Johnny in as coach instead of Sizz, so we'll see if they end up sticking it through or if we're going to be seeing NRG flying with a couple new players next split. At number 18, I have Complexity. This is AJG, Razebull, and CRR. Just above NRG based on their most recent performance. I still think Complexity is a great team. They're just looking outside of those lands, and if they can qualify for one, that would be huge for their season. But right now, I can't really rank them higher than anyone else in North America, so I have them at 18. Number 17, I have Evil Geniuses. This is Catalysm, Ivan, and Tox. And between deciding for Complexity and Evil Geniuses, they're both, I believe, around 7th for the split for each. Or I had them at 7th, both of those teams for NA and EU respectively. But I think EU actually had a better performance at the LAN, and Evil Geniuses has been fairly competitive throughout the split. They're losing games, getting eliminated to teams like Team Liquid. And so I don't hold that too much against them. They made a top 4 run, I believe. They did really solid in the last event. So I do have Evil Geniuses at 17, and they can definitely make one of the majors given the chaos that is Europe. At number 16, I have Furia. This is Card, Kaio, and Jan. As I mentioned, Justin was rumored to go to Furia a little while back. He was going to go in place of Kaio. I think that's more of a firm rumor on Kaio being out of Furia than it is Justin being out of NRG. But it'll be interesting to see if this team sticks together. I really hope they do. I mean, they've only played one split in North America, and they came up around 6th. They did have a pretty poor fall invitational, but I think there was a bit too much pressure on them to actually deliver. And so Furia at number 16, a very solid team. Can't really discount their LAN performance at the World Championship, and I really hope we get to see them on LAN here again soon. Number 15, you have Falcons. This is Ocalid, Ahmed, and TRK. It's kind of absurd to me that in my debut rankings. I'm putting this team this low. And I was a little disappointed. If you have been following along, I am a pretty big Space Station fan and was very pumped to see Space Station take the series against Falcons, and then proceeded to watch as Falcons lost every single other series except for the one against the APAC team in James Cheese. And so Falcons, I think they're still a solid team. They just haven't put it together at the 2 last LAN events. I hope they're able to find the form that they were in spring, because they were a very solid team then. It just seems like right now teams have them figured out, and it's up to Falcons to readjust their strategy in order to get back to being on the top. Number 14, you have the club, and this is Astronic, Lost, and BEMS. This team I had really high hopes for heading into the LAN. They won all 3 regionals in South America, looked really solid, but then they came to the LAN. They only beat KC Pioneers, and they lost all the rest of their series, and so ended up going 1-3 in the Swiss as well. But I do think this team has the potential to bounce back. This was BEM's first LAN. I think hopefully he'll be able to take that experience away. They go back and dominate South America like they have been. They will be much higher ranked heading into the Winter Major, as I expect to see them there no matter what. But right now, I do have to put the club at 14. Number 13, I have Team BDS. This is Monkey Moon Extra and Seku. This team, I wanted to put them higher than Quadrant, but I just really couldn't. I remember the head-to-head, even though it was the first event of the season, I do remember the head-to-head where Quadrant took it in Game 7 overtime against Team BDS, and that's the little nod for me there. This team, obviously former world champions, actually reigning world champions, can still make it to the top. I do worry for one, though, about Achilles' tweet. He said after BDS got knocked out by Liquid that it might be the last time they end up playing together as a trio. I hope that's not the case, because this roster still has plenty of potential. Obviously, reigning world champions is nothing to be scoffed at, and I don't think that's should be thrown away after one split. So hope to see these guys back on the pitch. And in my opinion, the 5th spot for an EU LAN is wide open if Team BDS wants to go back and take it. So Team BDS at 13 with plenty of chances to move upwards. Speaking of that 5th spot, for EU, I've got Quadrant at 12. This is EXO, Cash, and Relating Wave. I think this team kind of overperformed at the start of the split. They ended up going 1-3 recently in the Invitational, and then they went 1-3 in the Swiss stage at the Major as well. So definitely a solid team, but I'm not sure they're going to consistently be at the top of Europe. If they can pull some more upset wins, I could see them becoming like a version 1 situation where everyone's doubting them in predictions and be like, this roster's not actually that good. And then they consistently make lands, sneak in a top 3. I don't think they're terrible, but I just think there's plenty of teams that are ahead of them. Right now, I do have them at number 12, though. Number 11, I have G2 Esports. This is JNAP Chicago Atomic. These guys have had a pretty rough split for G2 standards. They got 4th in 2 of the regionals, and then they went out in the Swiss for the Fall Cup. They also went out in the Swiss at the Fall Major, losing to Moist in Game 5. So unfortunate draw in the last round for them, but that being said, every team in that last round was really good. So G2, I do have at number 11 for now. I think they can bounce back. They just had a rough split. They got to figure a few things out themselves, and I expect them to be able to bounce back to kind of top the charts at North America again here soon. At number 10, I have Power, and it's ridiculous that I'm ranking these guys this high. We watched them win the last 2 events at OCE, but there were still people looking at Pioneers being the 1 seed and saying Pioneers is the better team. I don't remember if I was one of those teams or not. I did want to trust in Pioneers, but Fever joining Anthus is just an OCE power team, and I don't think people realize that until they saw them play. Power were able to take down G2 at the Major, and they actually took them down in a sweep. And so that's the reason they are ranked above G2 right now. I hope they can continue their domination of OCE, as right now Pioneers need to force their hand to get back into the top 1 of OCE. I think Pioneers pretty much are a lock for the 2 seed the way things are going. But if Power stay at the level they're at and get some more LAN experience, this could be the most threatening team out of Australia in a very long time. Number 9, I have Space Station Gaming. This is Daniel, Arsenal, and LJ. I don't think I'm biased putting them here. I think they were the 9th best team at the tournament. Their wins weren't super quality. They took down Falcons and the club, but their strength of schedule otherwise was absolutely absurd, and I'm a little bit high on Copium when I say that. But they did face FaZe and Carmine Corps, and I don't know why I'm blanking on the last one. Team Secret. So 2 top 4 teams, and then the European powerhouse that ended up losing in the quarterfinals. So definitely a strong performance, or a strong strength of schedule from Space Station. They didn't have the best performances in the series that they lost, but they looked pretty in control against the club. I do have them at number 9, although this could change because a lot of people are theorizing the roster change coming through. Personally, I don't really want to see it. I think this roster could still bounce back, and if they get more time, they could be really solid. But right now, Space Station number 9. At number 8, I have version 1. This is Beast Mode, Common Torment. I wanted to see this team do better. I really did. And they had a fantastic Swiss stage where they went 3-1, only lost to Oxygen, and then they went to the quarterfinals and lost to Team Secret, which was really unfortunate because I was really pulling for these guys like start of Sunday once I saw Space Station got eliminated. Beast Mode, fantastic player. Calm and Torment are always going to be doubted. Calm is the demo merchant, as everyone seems to know him as, and then Torment is just so underrated on defense. He's fantastic, and it feels like every single time there's roster talks, it's theorized that Torment's gone. I really hope that's not the case. This team obviously can still do amazing. They've made top 8 at every single LAN they've been to, and they're pretty solidly qualifying for every single LAN as well. So version 1 at number 8 with plenty of room to move up, in my opinion, and I hope they can. Number 7, Team Secret. This is sad. KV1 Ignite. These guys showed up in an unbelievable way. They beat the number 4 team out of both North America and Europe. They beat the number 5 team out of Europe, and they beat the number 3 team out of North America. That's in total Space Station Quadrant version 1 in Moist. And now Moist made the finals. Keep that in mind. So Team Secret had an amazing run after losing their first series to Team Liquid. They did end up falling to Moist in the quarterfinal or in the semifinal, so Moist did get their revenge. But Team Secret had a fantastic run, especially for the 2 seed out of South America. This propels them to 7th in my rankings, and I'm curious to see what the South American landscape looks after this performance from Team Secret. Number 6, I have Oxygen. This is Archie, Jorias, and Oli. These guys went 3-0 through the Swiss, and then ended up falling to FaZe in the quarterfinals. So kind of a really Oxygen result, all things considered. They looked really good in every single series. They were the only team to beat Gen G throughout the entire tournament, and they did so with style, 3-0ing them. It did not look close, and they really kind of owned the Swiss, but just couldn't put it together once FaZe were able to adjust to their game plan. They took them out pretty cleanly, or in Game 7, but pretty cleanly after that. The adjustments were able to pay off. And so Oxygen, I do have it number 6. But that being said, these guys did impress me this LAN. I thought they were going to be much shakier than they actually were. If they can keep the performances that they saw in Swiss when there was less pressure, I expect these guys to do fine. It's just once it gets to an important moment and the expectations are there, I'm curious to see what happens to this team. Number 5, FaZe Clan, First Killer, Cybical, and Mist. I really missed the chance to do the classic 4th clan meme because that seems to be pretty consistent for them. They went out in the semifinals in this major as well, and so they lost to Gen G in that semifinal. This team seems destined for 4th, and it's really unfortunate watching the same thing happen over and over again. I'm still kind of a Cybical fan. I want to see him succeed, but right now I really can't put FaZe much higher than 5th just because of the teams that I have ahead of them. Number 4, I have Team Liquid, and that might be a little highly rated now that I think about it. But they did take Gen G to Game 7. It's a very talented roster, and a Chronic, a Tau, and Oski. I think this ceiling is incredibly high. When we see them playing at their ceiling, it's amazing. And I just think they really ran into an unfortunate quarterfinal opponent. Anyone else, and they probably make it through to at least the semifinals. They already almost made it to the semifinals despite facing Gen G. So Team Liquid, really solid tournament by them. Happy to see them still making waves. They obviously won the most recent European event, and so I'm curious to see how they do online and hope that they don't have to really push it in the last event to make that major. Number 3, Moist Esports, Rise, Joyo, and Astral, and this was the most overperforming team at the major, and I said that wrong because they weren't like overperforming because I think this team has that in them. It was just nobody expected them to do what they did. They made round 5. They were able to take down G2 in that game 5, but then in the bracket, they looked amazing. They were able to take down Karmine Corp. Vertira left them for greener pastures, and they beat him on LAN and then beat Team Secret to make the finals. And they took it to Gen G in the finals too. Everyone was counting this team out. They looked at the 1-3 performance in the Swiss stage of the Fall Invitational and were like, that's what we kind of expected when Vatira left. But Moist showed up this tournament, showed that they are not to be trifled with. They're a number 2 team in Europe. I'm not sure if the rankings reflect that, but at least the statistics do. And a fantastic performance from them. Really impressed. Moist at 3. That being said, Karmine Corp is still above them in my rankings. Vatira, Itachi, Exotic. These guys have been far too consistent for me to take one LAN result and rank them above Moist. These guys actually faced off in the Swiss stage as well. This is the match that Karmine Corp used to get through. They were able to take down Moist in that 2-0 round. But, I mean, these guys have had the head-to-head over Moist. They've been dominating Europe. They've got, I think, 40 points just from the online stage alone. Went 3-0 in the Swiss, just fell in the quarterfinals. And so a tough loss doesn't really have me pegging them lower. I think they will bounce back very quickly. Vatira is already hitting double flip resets and ranked from what I saw on YouTube. So I think this team will do just fine. I still have them at number 2. Number 1, though, it's coming home. It's apparently Jack, Nolly, and Chronic. Gen G Mobile 1. These guys won the major. They're the number 1 seed out of North America. They're the first number 1 seed to win a major since coming back from COVID. So kind of an accomplishment for them. I didn't really expect them to do it. I'm not going to lie, heading into this tournament, I was like, they're going to do fine against North American teams, but they're going to struggle against European teams. And they did for a little bit. The Oxygen match was kind of brutal to watch if you're a Gen G fan, but then they figured it out. They were down 3-1 against Team Liquid, made that comeback, and then went through the rest of the bracket, defeated FaZe, defeated Moist in the finals. So Gen G obviously deserves the number 1 spot in the world. It's going to be tough to challenge them for a bit as they've been incredibly consistent throughout this entire split, and I'm excited to see what they have lined up for winter. That being said, that is my top 20 rankings post-Fall Major. I'll be doing this again after the Fall Open. I'll be doing a couple videos in between then, looking at the offseason changes from before the fall split and seeing how those ended up working out, as well as, you know, what roster changes we might see heading into the winter split and where rosters could expect to be. So make sure you subscribe so you can keep track of what I am doing and keep watching. Thank you. And yeah, I don't know how to end a video. I don't know how to talk. Y'all figure that out by now.